recently the congressional hearing, they had a whistleblower on, David, I think his first name is David Grush. And, I'm a student of body language like I know you are. And you can tell a lot by when people are, if you ask me a question and I'm like looking like this to the side, I'm fidgeting in my chair, I'm avoiding eye contact, those are all signs. But if you're like this on the microphone and looking at me and you're earnest and you're like basically trying to jump out of your chair to prove your point, that's who Grush was. He's like looking right at Macy in the eye, telling her when she asks him the loaded question, are there retrieved UFOs? He says, yes. Were there any bodies in those craft? He says, yes, there were biologics. And she asked him the $24,000 question, or $64,000 question, were the biologics human? And he says, no, they were not human. And my phone doesn't ring and the church dithers and sleeps. I mean, what do you do with information like that? Well, we need to see the bodies. Well, you saw the bodies.
Yes.
A while back when Jaime Maussan, with all due respect to Jaime, released the papier-mâché goofy dummies, which are a hoax, in my opinion. I believe that Jaime is not trying to perpetrate the hoax. Jaime's a great guy. I think he's been fooled like he was fooled with the ferry. Now, we proved when we got the ferry, Jaime, and it cost us a lot of money to do this, Richard Shaw, the late Richard Shaw and I, we paid Javier to come up, drive the ferry, which was this little demon-like thing in a jar. It fooled DNA experts in Mexico. It fooled us. It fooled veterinarians in Mexico. And it wasn't until Javier brought it to us. We had 3 veterinarians on a Saturday morning. We took the thing out. We put it under the x-ray machine. They're all going, wow, it looks real to me. It had birdshot in it, which really made it look like somebody shot this thing out of the sky. Well, after about an hour, when the ferry is on this little plastic laboratory plate, I kind of go, what's that look like? And I pick up this wooden thing with epoxy on the end, which was the arm. And the veterinarian looks and he goes, this is a construct. And we go rushing back, when we look at the x-rays, and sure enough, right here is where they placed this artificial wood with the epoxy. So it was a construct. That's real research. A couple of people said, well, I know that. Well, you didn't know. It fooled everybody. It fooled everybody, including the 3 veterinarians on a Saturday morning. But real research is out in the field, getting your, out of a library, as it were, and doing real research is what we did. And the moment we found out that it was fake, I got on the phone. I called you. I called Bob. I called Derek Gilbert. Stop the presses, because we did shows on it. It's a construct. It's fake. And then we created a free film, The Anatomy of a Hoax.
Now, this brings a question to my mind. What's to be gained by hoaxing? Maybe you make a little money. Maybe you think you can sell this thing and make some money. That's one motivation. But there seems to be a larger motivation. Jaime Maussan's recent disclosure.
Right.
What's the motivation there? Why try to hoax this event? We read the Bible. We know that there are invaders from another dimension who came and subverted mankind. It's all through the Bible. We wrestle not against principalities and powers, but against the rulers of darkness. We know it from the New Testament. We read from Jude how the angels invaded mankind and how they're going to be judged. We've got that all down pat.
Right.
And yet there's somebody out there constructing an alternate story. What's going on?
When Grush stands up or sits down and says to Representative Macy, we have biologics, okay, the phone doesn't ring, nothing happens. I mean, there's a little bit of a stir, but not much. How many churches talked about that on a Sunday morning? Who knows? Jaime Maussan stands up with the goofy, fake aliens, in my opinion.
Yeah, and everybody's seen that on television.
It's everywhere. It went viral.
And they even showed x-rays.
Well, the x-rays, I have a radiologist who remains anonymous, as most of these people who come forward, because they're working and they can't associate themselves with me. And I understand why.
Right.
It's okay. I get it. I'll be the fall guy.
Yeah.
But this radiologist said he'd look at the x-rays. He said, not on the record because he's not personal, but he said on the record to me that this is a construct. I looked at the x-rays. Yeah. These are pieces of other things slapped together. And that's exactly what the fairy was. I believe Jaime's intentions are real or noble, let's put it that way. But what this does is it muddies the waters. And it gets to the point where it sort of anesthetizes the public. Well, the guy cried wolf, and who knows about Grush, and what's for dinner tonight? It takes the sting and it obfuscates it, muddies the waters in ways that when the real thing finally comes out, and I'll give you an example of that. When the real thing finally comes out, nobody cares. I was in the Catalina Island Museum years ago. I discovered a picture.
Catalina Island, off the coast of California, and a place that people have gone to as tourists for years. And you found?
I'm in the archives, and it cost me $1,000 to get into the archives.
Wow.
Everything was picked through. It was all cataloged, handwritten manila envelopes, sealed pictures inside the manila. What I mean by sealed, wrapped in plastic for, preservation in the manila envelope. And they're bringing this stuff out, and I'm looking at them. And I find pay dirt. It's the one with Ralph Gooden leaning up against a shovel, and there in situ in front of him is a skeleton, which is about 9 feet because we had
a 9 foot skeleton.
A 9 foot skeleton.
And this is a legitimate photograph from how long ago?
Circa 1919, 1921, right around in there.
Okay, so it's old. It couldn't be.
The provenance is there. It's not a hoax. It's
not
a hoax. Okay, and that photograph basically went viral. Here's the problem. Before that, from years and years and years of hoaxes on the internet where you see a huge skull in a wheelbarrow or, someone unearthing this 50-footer in India, those are all Photoshop stuff. What does that do? Muddies the waters. So when someone like me finds the real deal, nobody cares. Nobody cares. Well, we saw that. Oh, it's probably just a hoax. Turn the page. What's for dinner? And that's what I take umbrage with, because it's almost like it's a managed agenda to put people to sleep to the point when they find, because that rewrites history. And it also validates and verifies Native American oral tradition that there were giants. And it's right out in Catalina. They were from New Hampshire all the way across the Americas. There's no doubt in my mind.
So I believe the Bible.
I do too.
Implicitly. The Bible is divinely inspired. And of course, any Christian believes that. And it is infallible when it comes to its basic grammar. It tells the truth.
Yes.
And it tells us a very, very prolonged story through all of the books of the Old Testament about man's war against the fallen ones and against the giants. And that's the story of the Exodus, and against the demonology of various kinds. And that, the major and the minor prophets. And you come into the New Testament, and you're still dealing with demonology, mm-hmm. and where I'm headed with this is one word: propaganda, mm-hmm. satanic propaganda.
That's exactly what we're looking at.
And I really do believe that needs to be brought out in the open.
Who controls the media? Why is it that the Grush story is buried? Because it was buried.
It was.
I didn't see it on CNN, Fox, NBC, ABC. Well, it's buried.
Review for those who might not know about that story.
Grush is the whistleblower.
Yeah.
He's in front of a special select committee in Congress to talk about UAPs, and he's being grilled. And I'll show this clip at the Prophecy Watchers conference coming up. I'm going to show the clip. And Representative Macy is asking him the questions. We sort of talked about this briefly before. Did you retrieve bodies from this crash disk? He goes, yes. Were they human or non-human? They were non-human biologics. He says it right to the camera. And it's not covered. This is astounding information. Now, is Grush lying? Some people immediately said, well, he's just, blah, blah, blah. He's under oath. He's under oath there. If he tries any funny business, he's in contempt. He can do jail time. And this is why he's so earnest and so honest. I believe not only whether or not he's seen them personally, other people have. And we've known this. For researchers like myself and yourself, we've known about this for decades. for
Sure.
decades. In our film on Roswell, which is coming up, we interviewed a couple who they were pastors. They were involved in setting affairs right and getting all affairs for people who were at the end of life. And one such man was Colonel Hill. Colonel Hill was OSS. OSS is the precursor to the CIA. This guy was an interrogator in World War II. He had like 3 different degrees and spoke, I think, 5 languages. Real smart guy. So he's a month away from passing, and they've known him for 2 years. And they're selling off his assets and distributing assets according to his wishes. And Carolyn, this is all on film. Now, not when Carolyn's talking to Colonel Hill, because by the time we got to Carolyn, she volunteered the information. But I'm a student of body language, and they're pastors. This is not a ruse. And she says, one day, because I had known Colonel Hill now for 2 years, and I said, what about Roswell? And he hung his head like this and let out a deep sigh and then looked at her and said, what about it? And she said, was it a weather balloon? He said, no, it wasn't a weather balloon. And this is all in our Roswell film, which should be out this year, by the way, 2023. And I'm working on it right now. I'm actually in post-production on it. With my business partner, Gil Zimmerman. And what's interesting is she asks about the bodies. And he said, yes, he was flown, according to Carolyn. And these guys are the salt of the earth, Jim and Carolyn Rankin. They're stand-up people. Colonel Hill was flown into Roswell within 48 hours of the retrieved bodies, within 48 hours. He tried to communicate with one of them who was still alive. He could not communicate it with it, had 6 fingers. So we've known about this from Roswell, from the Roswell days. And it was all the information was quashed. Jesse Marcel Sr. was made to look like a moron, confusing a weather balloon for a crashed material from another world. And this starts the decades of deliberate obfuscation